Hi there, it's Roy from Sulphur Sabers. Today we'll be looking at our 2-switch Proffie board NeoPixel installation. Now, Proffie boards are one of the better regarded lightsaber prop boards on the market, and you tend to find these in a lot of custom installs by some very respected installers. It's personally my board of choice when building my own sabers. It's a very flexible open source board which allows a lot of user customization, albeit through quite a steep learning curve in electronics and coding. But that's beyond the scope of today's video. Today we're simply going to look at its operation as it comes from pre-programmed from Sulphur Sabers. Now, the saber itself, this is the 2-switch model. So these models have a power, which is on and on-off switch, and an auxiliary switch, which is used for navigating menus and the like. First, let's look at the basics. Once you pick up your saber, you can simply activate it by hitting the power button and your saber will ignite. There's a very good accelerometer on these Proffie boards, so you get an absolutely sublime, smooth swing experience. And to turn your saber off, you simply dab it again. Note on the saber, even though it is a NeoPixel install, the emitter does illuminate somewhat. That's because on the PCB assembly, where you can see the brass springy pins in there that connect to the blade, these are also surrounded by some LEDs, which are the little white squares, which when you fire your saber up, ignite. So you have a little bit of illumination on the emitter. Now, it's not enough to illuminate a hollow dueling blade, it's more for show. Now, there are other ways to turn your saber on and off. The Proffie board comes equipped with gesture control. So if you want to turn your saber on, you can simply twist it back and forth, a little bit like throttling a motorbike, like so. And again, to turn your saber off. That's easier done with the blade in because there's more inertia to keep everything in line when you spin it. Here I'm just demonstrating it in my hands. Some people find the gesture control takes a bit of getting used to, but once you get used to it, you find you can't actually live without it. So that's the basics for turning your saber on and off, and just a little bit about how it's configured. Next, we'll look at functionality. Welcome back. Now let's look at some of the functionality of the saber. We've seen a little few indicators of some of the inherent sounds that can play once your saber is running. When the saber's on, you'll obviously get the saber hum. When you move the saber, you will get the swing effects with that beautiful smooth swing algorithm that gives you a very realistic experience from this Proffie board. And you will also have clashes which activate automatically when the board detects an impact. Now, just to reiterate, NeoPixel sabers, we don't rate them for dueling. Anyone who does rate them for dueling are being a little economical with the truth, I believe. They're just trying to sell you a saber and hope that the blade doesn't break. We've extensively tested NeoPixel blades, and they are prone to premature failure if you do duel with them. That's not to say you can't use them for maybe a little bit of light choreography. You can contact the blades, just don't expect to use them for combat, which is quite an active community here in New Zealand. If you do want to do that, you can still use NeoPixel install Saber, by the way. You can actually get in a little drop-in converter which has a high-powered LED which shines up a hollow blade. Normally it's the blades that fail when you use a NeoPixel Saber for dueling. So if you want to use your NeoPixel Saber and you do want to you want to duel, talk to us about getting a drop-in converter for it. But anyway, back to the sounds and the features. So let's look at those features again. Let's look at the generic hum. This particular sound font has quite a gritty hum effect. And you have a smooth swing, speed responsive. And you have also accent sounds as well, which play when you move the saber really fast. It makes for a very active experience. I talked about the third inherent sound that plays automatically, that is the clash sound. So when your blade hits against another blade, your saber will make a clash sound, and also you'll get a little bit of blade animation as well. Okay, so they are the three inherent sound effects of the saber. You also have a couple more that you can activate manually, one of which is something called blaster blocks, which if you tap the auxiliary button whilst the saber is running, you will play a blaster block. Now a blaster block, if you cast your mind back to the movies, is when our heroes are escaping from a bunch of stormtroopers and they will maybe use the lightsaber to deflect incoming blaster shots, and that's called a blaster block. Another manually activated sound that you can activate is called a lockup. And again, this is when you have your hero and villain dueling on screen. Inevitably, at some point, their blades will meet, and you get that kind of effect, because in lightsaber lore, plasma blades are sticky, so they stick together, and you get that electrical discharge sound. That's called a lockup, and you can simulate that on your saber quite easily. So the lockup effect will automatically activate when your blade makes contact with another blade, but you just have to hold the auxiliary button as you're going in for the swing. Remember, you do this with the blaster blocks. But if you hold it going in for a swing, that clash effect that you saw earlier, that impact effect, once you're holding the auxiliary button, will activate lockup. There it is, and it stays until you release the auxiliary button. So those are just some of the basic features that you can activate. On NeoPixel Sabers there are a couple more. So you have something called a tip drag. It's like lockup that you just saw, but you actually point the saber down, and if you impact the saber blade, just the tip of the blade will kind of glow white, and it's like you're dragging it across the ground. It's called a tip drag. You also have something called force effects, which if you long hold and release, so they're blaster blocks. Long hold and release the auxiliary button, you get a different sound played. Now some sound fonts that will be a quote, some it kind of makes like a force push sound, but that depends on the sound font that you have selected at the time. Sound font being the collection of sounds that make the saber sound as it does, and you have plenty of those, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay. Before I forget another thing, you can also turn your saber on muted. If you double click your saber, your power button. This is good if you're in a class, for example, and you want to turn your sound off so you can hear an instructor, or you're working through some choreography with a partner. You can activate your saber in mute mode just by double clicking. Turn it off as normal, either by hitting the button or giving it a twist. And that will reset back into sound mode automatically for you. Okay, so great little board. So that is some of the features of the board. Like I said, this is an open source board, so there is constant community development going on all the time. So you do have scope to modify your Saber a little bit further down the line. Like I said, it is a very steep learning curve if you want to do it yourself. It is a service that we offer through our sister company, Sulphur City Foundry, as opposed to Sulphur City Sabers. The Foundry concentrates more on custom work. We work with Proffie boards all the time. So that's something that we could do further down the line for you. However, I will say this default configuration comes incredibly well spec'd right out of the box, and there's probably something on there for everyone anyway, so chances of you wanting to modify this may be quite slim. Right, next let's look at the configuration and some of the different presets and ways that you can change the look and sound of your Saber. Welcome back. Now let's look at how we can change some of the configuration options for you on your Saber. So first off, in part one, we saw that we had a power button and an auxiliary button. So the power button deals with turning your Saber on and off. The auxiliary button, we use this to flick through our presets. Now you have 24, I think 25 presets on the standard Proffie configuration. So that's 25 different combinations of light with blade effect and sound that you can choose from. So let's look at some of them. First, I'll show you how to navigate through them. I won't cover all of them because there are 25. You can have a good deal of fun doing it yourself. So let's hit the auxiliary button whilst our Saber is off.
Anakin.
And we've changed to the next preset in the queue. Turn the Saber on. We can see that our Saber now sounds a lot different. It's a more classical lightsaber sound. Blaster blocks, clashes. Everything has changed because we've selected a new configuration which has a different sound font associated with it. And just to recap, the sound font is the collection of sounds that make your Saber sound the way it does. Let's move on to the next configuration by clicking the auxiliary button again. Again. Different sound once again.
Kenobi.
It's fire front. So that one you saw a bit of an electrical discharge and a delay in the startup. That's something called a pre-on, and some of these configurations will have that.
I can see him in my mind's eye.
That's called a pre-off. So let's look at what that looks like with the blade in. Okay, so a bit of a delay, with the Saber kind of starting up, and then we saw that little scroll effect, which is an effect that you only get with pixel blades. Should note out, this is a very deep red. Digital cameras tend to wash out bright colours. To get an indication of what colour the blade actually is, just look at the reflection in the glass below. It shows that it's a red blade.
I can see him in my mind's eye.
Very dramatic as more. Next preset, we have a light blue, and again different blade effect, more of a shimmer, and a slower scroll on ignition. And a slower scroll off.
Tell me, is this training?
My training? No. Always training. The universe is.
So there's 25 of these.
I'm the one you're after. Bring your army. I'm ready.
There's the Prion. There's Luke.
No joy in this victory. We shall find.
Too many killed on both sides.
Cool. Should point out that normally you can skip the Prions just by using gesture control, gesture activation.
No joy in this victory. We shall find.
Too many killed on both sides.
Obviously not on the pre-off, but on that Prion, rather than have to delay.
No joy in this victory. We shall find.
Too many killed on both sides.
You can actually skip the Prions just by using gesture control. There we go, and that's a nice classic Sith red. Obviously that's an Emperor sound font. Let's push the blade in properly. There we go. Again, I like blue. I'm just going to go through these quickly. This is a different Prion effect. It's like a warming, bit of a strobe on the blade.
What do you want? Your head.
Well, like I said, you have 25 of these presets. Quite a long Prion this one. And a fade out. Okay, so you have a lot of pretty different versions on the blade. And the fact that a NeoPixel has a string of LEDs running up the blade means that you can get these interesting blade effects. Let's pop the blade out now. This makes it a bit more easier to wield. And you can cycle through these quite quickly.
A little unhinged, typical of humans. They scratch the surface, never fail to look within.
Just try something. Sometimes you have the feature where you can roll back one. No, it's not activated on this config. Okay, let's say it's a very configurable Saber config, this one. So that is how you cycle through your different presets. And you have 25 of those. So out of those 25, you're probably going to come up with half a dozen different favours that you use quite regularly. Okay, so let's look at something else. What you saw me do there was do a long press, so you hold for about half a second and release on the power button. The Saber has a ability to turn on some background music, should you ever want something to play whilst you're dueling. That keeps playing whilst you're using the Saber. So the default tracks that come on it are Holst, the Planet Suite. It's a standard Proffie track list. It's an interesting feature. Not a lot of people use it. More than likely you're going to turn it on by accident, so this is just showing you how to turn it off. So with your power button, you just hold for about half a second and release. Once again, to accidentally turn on that background music, hold for about half a second and release that power button. So if your Saber ever starts doing this, you can just turn it off again. Saber has to be off to turn it off. Not running. Hold your power button for half a second and then just release it. And that's how to turn off your backing music. So something a bit more handy.
Smooth Jedi.
Whilst your Saber is running, you'll see that's a blue. Is the ability to change the colour of your blade on any one of those presets. It's something called the colour wheel. It is very cool. You use both of these buttons in order to do this. So with your Saber running, you hold the auxiliary button, and then you quickly tap the activation button, the power button. Your Saber will do a doo-doo-doo sound. You might have just heard it there. And that's now in colour wheel mode. Now if you rotate the Saber along its axis, do it against the reflection, easy to see, you can see that your blade will cycle through a whole heap of colours. There we go. To lock in a new colour for your preset, you simply rotate to the colour that you want. So let's go purple. Find it. There we go. And just long press your power button. Oops. We just do the same thing again. So we go through, hold the auxiliary button again, and then just down the power button, and that will lock in the blade colour. What I was doing there was thinking about how it works on my sabers, my own personal sabers, my Proffie boards. I just have to long press to look at it because I've played with the config. Okay, but for yours it's nice and easy. Hold your auxiliary button and tap to get into coloured wheel mode. Hold the auxiliary button and tap to lock in your colour. Really powerful feature of the Proffie board. And that's great if you're going, maybe you're recording a duel against somebody else and you both go up with blue blades and you're like, oh, it looks a bit better if we've got different coloured blades. If you've got a Proffie board, you can quickly change the colour of your blade to something different so it looks a little bit better on camera. And there we go. So that's the basic functionality on the Proffie 2.2 standard configuration that you can expect on the Sabers from Sulphur City Sabers. Like I said, there's more than enough on there for anyone, but it is an open source board that you can access and...
Luke Skywalker.
Oops, hit the auxiliary button. Let's have a quick look actually. Bear in mind, some of these chassis may vary depending on the Saber model, but there's the board in there. There's the USB port that you use for, not this one, but the one on the board. You lift the board out and you can reprogram the board with a new configuration. And hidden on the other side of the board is a little SD card with all of your sound fonts on there. So, like I said, the beauty with a Proffie board is it is customizable should you ever wish in the future. Like I said, it is a bit of a learning curve if you're new to electronics and programming, but like I said, that's something we can do for you over at the Foundry. Okay, it's a beautiful Saber. Proffie boards are fantastic. Hope you enjoy. Bye bye.